Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to How to Position Yourself in the U.S. Media Market. My name is Amy Geffen, and I am a career coach. I own my own business, Geffen Careers. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and what we're going to be doing today, and then I'll launch into the presentation. I have had 4 careers and 14 jobs. I started out as a teacher of English as a second language. I went at night for a PhD in French. I wanted to be a French professor. That never worked out. I moved into college administration. So I worked at 3 different colleges in continuing education and distance learning. Then from there, I moved into association management. That is not-for-profit professional associations, like the one that you are members of. And I was running their education programs, professional development programs. And then I moved up the career ladder and became a CEO of the New York Society of Security Analysts, which is for people in finance. My background is not in finance, although I've worked at a number of places with people in finance. I worked for the Financial Women's Association, among other places. And I was there for 3 years, 7 months. I had a contract. It was the only job where I actually had a contract. Most jobs do not have contracts. At the end of the contract, after 3 years, they didn't renew the contract, but they said they wanted me to keep working, so I kept working, but I knew that any day now someone was going to end this position for me. So when the lawyer came in with my severance package and I read the package, I said, well, I need outplacement services. Have you heard of the 5 O'Clock Club? He said, yes. The 5 O'Clock Club is now called Get 5. It is an outplacement company. What is outplacement? Outplacement is it's a company that provides workshops, training, individual coaching for people who have been laid off. So when a large company, a bank, a publishing house, Macmillan, et cetera, lay people off, as part of their package, they give them a certain amount of money, and then they give them outplacement. Why? First, it's the right thing to do. You want to help people get the next job. Secondly, you want to maintain the image of your organization. And if you don't give someone outplacement, the ability to find their next job, they are going to say nasty things about you on the internet, on Glassdoor. And so the other reason that companies will do outplacement for their laid-off workers is to maintain their image, their positive image. Okay, so what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about the 5 steps in a job search: assessment, branding, connecting, differentiating yourself from the competition, and enhancing. We're going to talk a little bit about a resume and how a resume in the United States is different from the CV in Europe and other countries. And we're going to talk about LinkedIn and why it's very important to have a LinkedIn profile, and the similarities between the LinkedIn profile and your resume, and the differences between your LinkedIn profile and the resume. And then we'll talk a little bit about the hidden job market. Where are all these jobs? How do you find these jobs? How do you build your network, connect with people, get the meetings, get the interviews, and ultimately get the job? So the 5 steps, let's start with the 5 steps. Any job search, it doesn't matter what your field is, you're all in media, you're journalists, whether it's online writing, writing for magazines, newspapers, foreign, US, whatever. 5 steps: assessment, branding, connecting, differentiating, enhancing. So what does all that mean? What is assessment? The first thing that you need to do, and I do this with every single one of my clients, whether they know what they want, they have a job title in mind, or whether they have no clue what they want to do, anywhere from a college graduate to a baby boomer to a mom returning to the workplace who's been raising her kids at home and needs to get back to work. Assessment consists of figuring out what are your best skills, what are your accomplishments that you're most proud of. And accomplishments are not simply job descriptions. Accomplishments consist of a problem you solved, an action that you took to solve the problem, and a result. And where possible, we like to show results in terms of numbers or percents. Now, it's very easy if you're in sales, you can say, I increased sales by 15%, or I went over my quota by $100,000. Okay, journalism is not quite the same thing. However, if you have been published, you can say how many articles have been published. If they have viewers, how many viewers have seen your articles? If you put something online on the internet, You know how many people have seen it. You know how many eyeballs have looked at your article. So where you can, you want to talk about the accomplishments in terms of numbers, percents. I work with people in education. They say, well, you can't put numbers on education. I said, yes, you can. You can say how many people you train. You can say what was the rating. You can say how many people were affected by the people that you trained in the room. So if you're teaching teachers and there are 20 teachers in the room and each of those teachers has 50 to 100 students, well, you are reaching, in effect, that number of students by teaching the teachers in the room. So you need to think a little bit out of the box in terms of your accomplishments. Then you have to figure out, okay, what are my best skills and what are the jobs that make sense for me with those skills? So it's a combination of what your skills are and what jobs make sense for you. Now, some people have grandiose ideas about what they would like to do. But what my job is to bring people down to reality, to be candid with people and say, look, this is what's realistic, given your skill set, given your experience, given what's out there in the job market. And so you come up with a job target. Maybe you come up with 2 or 3 job targets. What's a job target? A job target consists of 3 things. A job target consists of an industry, a location, and a job title. So let's say you want to be a news editor. Well, a news editor of what? Is it going to be a newspaper? Is it going to be a magazine? Is it going to be an online publication? Is it going to be in broadcasting? Where is it? Is it in New York? Is it in Chicago? Is it in Washington, D.C.? Is it in San Francisco? So you may have more than one job target, because if you're looking in 2 different cities, well, that's 2 different targets, even though the job title may be the same. If you're looking in various media, you may have different job targets. If you're targeting written media or online media or broadcasting media. Okay, so that's your target. You can't move forward and write your resume and write your LinkedIn profile unless you have the target. You can't just say, oh, write me a resume. No, it doesn't work that way. First, you have to go through the assessment, figure out your skills, your accomplishments, come up with the target. Then the next step is the branding. So, what's branding? Branding consists of all the things that market you to the job that you want. Just like a company has a brand. Companies have logos, they have brochures, they have advertising. You as an individual have a brand. And what does the brand consist of? It consists of your pitch, your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile. These are all part of your brand. And just like branding for a company that has to be consistent in its message, and you all know about messaging because you're writers, your brand has to be consistent in its messaging. So you need to have the same keywords and the same phrases in your pitch, in your cover letter, in your resume, in your LinkedIn profile, in the letters you write to get meetings, in the follow-up email you write after you've had an interview. There has to be consistency in what you say and how you present yourself. So let's go over the resume a little bit and talk about the differences between some of the resumes, the CVs that you may be using in Europe or other countries, and what we use here in the United States. So what you do want to include in your resume in the United States is your name, your cell phone, and your phone number. You do want to include 3 to 5 accomplishments at the top, bulleted accomplishments, and they can be from any job, any time. You don't put the dates in, but you include accomplishments that are relevant for the job title you're going for. Then you want to include skills. And don't just say writing. You have to be very specific. What kind of writing are we talking about? And then you're going to have a reverse chronological order of the jobs that you've had, the company, the title, and under each job, you're also going to have accomplishments, not a job description. because everybody who does what you do has the same job description. What distinguishes you from other people are your accomplishments. Now, what you're not going to put in a resume for a job in the United States, and this is very important, you are not going to put in a photograph. You may have gone online and seen, oh, we give you a free template and it has a photograph. Absolutely not. You don't put in your photograph. You don't put in the country where you were born. You don't put in your age or your birth date. Why? In the United States, there are strict rules about hiring. And hiring managers are not allowed to make decisions, certainly not looking at a resume, about who you are, what your background is, what your nationality is, what your ethnicity is, how old you are. Not at all. So do not put any of that information in your resume. They won't even look at it if it has that information in it. It'll be rejected out of hand. No address. Now, why don't you put an address in your resume? Well, if you live in South Africa and you want a job in New York, why are you making a big deal about the fact you're living in South Africa? If you want to live in New York, that's great. All you need is your cell phone and your email address. Okay? They may tell by the cell phone. Cell phones have numbers. Different countries have different numbers. They can figure it out. But you're not putting out there your address, your street address. The reason we don't do that in the United States, for those of us who do live in the United States, there are two reasons. One, people have prejudices about where people live. If you come from a big city like New York City and you're familiar with different neighborhoods, you may say, oh, so-and-so lives in such and such a neighborhood. That's not a great neighborhood. People do have prejudices and biases, so you don't want to put your address in. The second reason you don't put your address in is someone may say, oh, that person lives too far away. How are they going to get to work on time every day? You certainly don't want to be knocked out of a job because they think you live too far away and you'll never get to work on time. So those are two reasons. There's a third reason, and that is also security. You don't want people to know where you live. It's none of their business, frankly. But that's an aside. Okay, so no addresses. We said no birthday, no country of origin, and no references. Don't even say references available on request. We used to do that years ago. We no longer do that. Why? You don't want to give out your references to every single job you apply for until you actually get an interview and they're interested in you. And then they say, oh, now we need references. And you say, yes, I'll give them to you, but first I want to check with them because I don't want to waste my references. You don't want to keep annoying these people who are doing you a favor by giving you a reference. The people who are interviewing you understand that. They know you're not going to give out the names willy-nilly, of 2 or 3 people, because you don't want them contacted. The other reason is this. You want to be able to contact a reference and let that person know, I've been interviewed for such and such a job at XYZ company, and this is what the job is, and I'd like you to be my reference, and I'd like you to mention a few things. You need to prep your references before they get the phone call from the company. You don't want a company just calling someone out of the blue. So that's another reason you don't give the names of the references, and you certainly do not put your references on your resume. Okay, so now let's move to the LinkedIn profile. There are 3 ways the LinkedIn profile is similar to a resume. First of all, it's an advertisement for you. It's your brand. It tells everybody who you are. Second of all, it talks about your accomplishments and your skills. And thirdly, it lists your work experience. Now, there are a few things that are different, and these are very important. The LinkedIn profile has a headline at the top. After your name, there's a headline. And the headline consists of 140 characters. You need to use those characters to the best of your ability to list the different things that you can do, including your skills. You can say your job title, and you could add skills. So mine says Chief Career Coach. It also says educator, speaker, online, learning, okay? I fit in as many keywords as I could in those 140 characters until I couldn't fit in any more. Very important, because hiring managers, recruiters, search firms are searching on LinkedIn by keywords, and you want your keywords to show up, not only in the headline, also in the summary. Now, the summary section has 2,000 characters. That's a lot. You know how much that is. That's a lot that you can write in the summary section. The difference is, in the summary section, you can use the word I, the first person. You never use I, the first person, in your resume. You can, and we recommend that you do use I in your summary. And you say something about what you're passionate about, which you can never do in a resume. So you say, I'm passionate about covering XYZ in this country. And you talk about yourself a little bit and your background. You put in 3 to 5 key accomplishments in the summary. You put in several skill sets in the summary, the same ones that you put in the headline. Everybody always asks me, yes, you're repeating yourself? Yes, you are repeating yourself, because every time you put in a keyword, and that's a keyword people are searching for, the more times you have that keyword, the higher up your name will appear. So yes, you are repeating yourself. Another difference, in the LinkedIn profile, you are able to get endorsements and recommendations. Endorsements are not worth very much, because anyone can see you and look at the skills you've checked off and check you off and say, oh yeah, I endorse you for, writing news stories. I endorse you for foreign coverage. Not important. What is important are the recommendations. You should have 2 to 3 recommendations. So once again, you need to go to your references. Go to people who know your work very well, whom you know will write a positive reference for you. Ask to see it before they put it up, because you cannot put it on your LinkedIn profile. The person writing the reference has to do that himself or herself. Since you know the person, you can ask them to write it and ask to review it before it actually goes online. All right, so that's another difference. You will have recommendations. Questions about the LinkedIn profile. All right, so the key things about the LinkedIn profile: the headline with 140 characters, the summary with 2,000, include accomplishments and skills. Reverse chronological order, again, include accomplishments, not just job descriptions. 2 to 3 recommendations. And if you can, try to get more than 500 connections. If you get a star, there's this system that they created with LinkedIn profiles, that if you have your 3 recommendations and if you have everything filled in and you have over 500 connections, you will get a star. And again, the star helps you move up when someone does a search. I have something like 2,900 connections, but I've had a LinkedIn profile for a long time. All right, that's the LinkedIn profile. So that's another piece of your branding. Another piece of your branding is the pitch. How many of you have heard of the word elevator pitch? You know what an elevator pitch is? Elevator pitch basically is 2 or 3 sentences. It could be anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Tells people who you are. Hi, I'm Amy Geffen. I'm a career coach, and I'm an association executive. One of my biggest accomplishments is I put 100 courses online on Blackboard in 4 years for the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. I'm interested in working as a director of professional development at a small association. It's very, very brief. It tells people who you are, a little bit about your background. You may have 1 or 2 accomplishments. That's it. Write it out and time yourself, so you have 2 minutes. Write another one that's 1 minute, and write another one that's 30 seconds. I belong to a business network, and every week we have to give our commercial, which is essentially the same thing, and we have 45 seconds. You could say a lot in 45 seconds, but you don't want to say it so quickly that people can't hear you. So it's very important to time it. The third step is connecting or networking. And when I talk to people about networking, everybody says, well, yeah, I know I need to network, but how many of you answer ads on the internet? Raise your hand in this group. Raise your hand if you answer ads on the internet.
You mean job ads?
Job ads, job ads, job ads. Okay. Yeah. How many of you have gotten an interview from those? Okay. 4 people raised their hands, 0 interviews. Okay. When I do this at the public library, there are about 65 people in the room, and I ask the same question. 65 hands go up. Everybody goes online to answer job ads. Then I ask, well, how many of you actually got an interview for a job? 10 hands. How many of you got a job? 5 people. 5 people out of 65, do the math, it's less than 10%. So when we talk about the hidden job market, they're not the jobs that are advertised. 80% of jobs are not advertised. Why aren't they advertised? They're not advertised for a number of reasons. Companies like to hire from within. Companies like to hire people who have been recommended by current employees, because someone who's working at a company knows the culture, they know the people. And if they recommend someone, then the hiring manager figures, well, yeah, they've recommended someone who we know will be a good fit. Lots of people will have the qualifications, but not everybody's a fit. So that's the hidden job market. So what are the ways to find a job? There are really only 4 ways to find a job. That's it. I don't care what you're doing, but there are only 4 ways. The first way is to answer ads on the internet, and you really shouldn't spend more than 10% of your time doing that. The second way is through a search firm or recruiter. 10 to 15% of people get jobs that way. The third way is through networking. 30 to 40% of people get jobs that way. More so in Europe, but at least 30 to 40% in the United States get jobs through networking. And the other 40% get jobs through directly contacting someone at a company who would be in a position to hire you if there were a job. You don't know if there's a job yet, but you're working toward getting meetings with people who are in a position to do the hiring. All right, so hidden job market. The object is to expand your network. So you all belong, you're here, you belong to this association. How many of you belong to a United States Association for Media or Journalists? Okay, not enough. You need to belong to an association here in the United States, and hopefully has a chapter in New York or in Washington, D.C., wherever you live and work. And you need to start going to meetings and meeting people and developing relationships. Networking is not just going to an event and handing out your business card. It's meeting those people again for breakfast or lunch or a meeting for coffee, to build a relationship with people, to get to know you, who can trust you, who can then recommend you when they find out about a job. It's not enough to simply exchange business cards. You really need to develop relationships. How many of you belong to an alumni association from your college or university? Good for you. All right. If you don't, you should. Even if you don't know the people, an alum from your university is 95% likely to talk to you as opposed to some total stranger who you meet. You can find alums either through your directory from your association or on LinkedIn. Do a search for your university and for your field, or your university and a particular company where you'd like to work, or a broadcasting network. See what pops up. Contact them first via LinkedIn and say, oh, I'm impressed with your background. I'd love to stay in touch. I'd love to connect with you. That's your first thing. That's it. Then the second one is, can we meet for coffee? Do you have time next week? Or for a phone call. Obviously, if they're not in New York, you can't meet them for coffee, but you can meet by phone. So that's your second email. And then you want to take it offline and you want to talk to the person by phone or meet the person if you can and start building a relationship. So that's the second way to build your network, through alumni networks. Third way, civic or religious organizations. That means the Elks, the Masons, any religious organization, churches, temples, mosques, synagogues, you name it. Why? It builds your network of people. They're people whom you see every week or a couple of times a month. They get to know you. Once again, they know you, you know them, they feel comfortable, they can trust you, you're credible. They hear of something. Most people have a network of 100 to 200 people that they know. You don't know whom they know. So just because someone is not in your field doesn't mean that they don't know people who are in your field, because they know a whole bunch of other people. Okay. Another way to build your network, volunteer work. How many of you do volunteering? Okay. Lots of opportunities in New York to volunteer, whether it's with a food pantry or a clothing drive or a not-for-profit that needs your help. When you volunteer at the same place doing something similar, maybe it's once a month, it doesn't have to be every week, it could be tutoring, it could be once a month. Again, you get to meet the other volunteers. You build relationships with the other volunteers. They have their own networks. It's another way to build your network and develop relationships with people. Okay, so that's the connecting. So the object is to connect to get meetings. Now, I'm going to stop for a moment and just talk about the online and the ATS. Who knows what ATS stands for? ATS, Applicant Tracking System. That is why you are not getting answers when you put your application in to an online job ad. An ATS is an applicant tracking system. It is an artificial intelligence software application that matches your resume to the job description. And if there isn't an 85 to 90% match, guess what? No human being is ever even going to look at your resume. So, one of the applications that I use, I have access to because I am a Get 5 certified coach, is a resume optimizer. It's an ATS system, and with my clients I can put in their resume and I can put in a job description, and out pops a 4-page report saying you have these skills, you lack these skills, you have these hard skills, not these, you have these soft skills, not these, you need this, you're lacking this, you're lacking that. If someone feels, yes, he or she can do the job, but their resume doesn't reflect that, then I can rewrite the resume based upon the results I get from this applicant tracking system. That's why you're not getting answers, essentially, because if there's not a good enough match with the keywords in your resume with the system, it's not going to work. I'll give you an example. One of my clients misspelled healthcare. She made 2 words out of healthcare. It's actually 1 word. So it wasn't picked up in the ATS. She used Microsoft Office as one of her skill sets. They were looking for Excel, PowerPoint, Word. She didn't have those words, but she said, I have Microsoft Office, but that's not what is in the job description. We're talking exact words, exact spelling. So those were easy fixes for me to do in order for her resume to match up with the job description. All right, so you're going to get the hidden job market. You're trying to reach people at these companies who are hiring managers. That does not mean human resources. That's very important. You are not applying to the human resource department. They're there to throw out your resume in the circular file. That means the garbage, okay? They're not there to hire you. You want to find the names of people who are in a position to hire you. So it's 1 to 2 levels above you. So maybe it's a managing director or vice president or whatever other titles there are. You need to make your list of companies where you'd like to work, and then you need to research to find out, well, who are the people in a position to hire you? If it's the head of the news agency, or the editor of the feature desk, or the editor of the news desk, or the editor of whatever. Then you're going to be writing directly to these people in order to get a meeting. Now, you don't know whether there's a job or not, and that's okay. What you want is a meeting, an opportunity to present yourself to someone who's in a position to hire you if and when a position opens up. Okay, so then how are you going to get the meetings? You make your list, you get the names of people. And here's where I can help again. As a coach, I have access to a database of thousands of companies with the names of hundreds of people who work in those companies with their email addresses and their phone numbers. because it's a two-step process. First, you need to find the name of the person and send an email. And then you need to follow up with a phone call. And sometimes it can take 5 or 10 phone calls. Why? Because the person isn't there. The administrative assistant picks up. All right, we'll get to that. So you're going to get a meeting, and there's 2 ways to get meetings. There's 2 different letters. They're emails. One is called a direct email, and one is called a targeted email. Direct email is a 4-paragraph email. First paragraph says, I am a journalist for XYZ, and I'd love to get your career advice. Notice, you don't say I'm applying for a job. You don't even know if there's a job. I'd like to get your career advice. Second paragraph, you give your pitch. Third paragraph, you put in some of your accomplishments. Some of my recent accomplishments include. Fourth paragraph, you say, I think I can make a real contribution to your publication, and I'd love to meet with you to discuss it further. Send the email. You don't call. With the 10 to 20 companies where you'd really like to work, then you send the targeted email. Very similar. Basically, it's the same 4 paragraphs, okay? I'm a journalist, I've written this is my background, I have 10 years experience, some of my recent accomplishments include, bullet your accomplishments. I'd love to talk with you about how I can make a contribution to your publication or to your broadcasting network, and I shall call you in a couple of days. Now, you cannot say that in every single email you send because you don't have the time to make all those phone calls. So you need to prioritize your list of companies and your top 10, 15, 20 companies. You're going to say, and I shall call you. And then the next day or 2 days later, don't wait a week because you're not mailing this. This is an email. You call. And if the person whom you're calling does not answer you, and it's an administrative assistant or somebody else, you say, and they ask, who are you? You do not give your name. You say, I'm the person who wrote an email to Mr. So-and-so or Ms. So-and-so, and they are expecting my phone call. When do you expect them back in the office? Now, it's a little subterfuge, but you don't want to keep giving your name, because what if it takes 5 phone calls? You're going to call them 5 times and leave your name 5 times? That's not going to work. That doesn't leave a very good impression. So you don't leave your name. You keep calling. You say, when is so-and-so coming back? And then you try to call then. Or maybe you call at 8 a.m., or maybe you call at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. when this person is still in the office and the administrative assistant has left for the day. So you want to get a meeting. You say, can I have 10 to 15 minutes of your time to talk about my career and find out about your career? And that's really all you want. If they don't live in New York, so then you're talking about a phone call, you set up a phone call, same thing. And if they're really interested in you, or if it's one of the alums, you know, they may give you a half hour of their time or 45 minutes of their time. But basically, you're asking for 10 to 15 minutes because you don't want to waste the person's time. Okay. So you get the meeting. Now, what are you going to do at the meeting? Make sure you're prepared for the meeting. Make sure you know you're going to have at least 3 things you're going to say about yourself and 3 questions you're going to ask this person. The 3 things about yourself could be 3 accomplishments. It could be part of your pitch. The 3 questions that you want to ask might include, doesn't necessarily have to include, but might include, how did you get to this position? Okay. What is your day like? What challenges is your company facing? What projects are coming down the pike the next 3 months, the next 6 months? Write down on a little index card before you walk in 3 things you want to say about yourself and 3 things you want to ask, because in the heat of the moment, we always forget. And then we leave, and it's l'esprit de l'escalier. We forget, and then we remember when we leave, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that, I forgot to say this. So yeah, we all get nervous, so it's better to write it down, take it with you, at least you know, okay, you've got that little safety thing. Okay, so that's getting the meetings. Okay. Differentiating yourself. what does that mean? I mentioned earlier that many of you have similar backgrounds, you have similar skill sets, but what separates you from everyone else are the specific accomplishments that you can point to. So when I work with my clients and we do the assessment, I ask them to write down 25 accomplishments over the course of their lifetime. It could be things that you've done for paid work, unpaid work, consulting work, part-time jobs, summer jobs, internships. It doesn't necessarily have to be what you've done in the last year or two, but you come up with 25 accomplishments. And then you look at that list and you pick 7, the 7 accomplishments that you are most proud of. And then you write a paragraph about those. When did you do it? How did you do it? What skills did you use? What people did you work with? How did you feel about it? And then I give my clients a list of about 50 skills. And for each of those 7 accomplishments, they have to check off the skills that they used in each of those accomplishments. And then you can see visually, organically, oh yeah, those are my best skills. I mean, it'll pop out. You'll have 5 or 6 or 7 check marks on certain skills, and those are the ones that obviously are your best skills. All right. So when you prepare for an interview, an actual job interview, or even this meeting that you're having, you need to be ready to talk about 2 or 3 of your accomplishments. You don't need to talk about 25. You don't need to talk about 7. You need to become familiar with 2 or 3 and be able to tell a story that will be of interest to the person you're talking to, that says, oh, when I was working here, this was the situation, and I needed to do this, and I needed to do that, and this was the result. So people remember stories, and they will remember you better if you have a good story. And so from your list of accomplishments, you're going to pick your top 7, and from the 7, you'll pick 2 or 3 that are appropriate for a particular job that you're going for, or 2 or 3 that relate to the type of company that you're interviewing with. That's very important. That is how you are going to differentiate yourself from everybody else. All right, so enhancing. So let's say, okay, you go on the interview. Now, there are certain kinds of questions that people tend to ask on interviews that you can expect. So there are typical questions, and then there are not so typical questions, the difficult questions. And then there are also behavioral questions. So what's the difference? Typical questions are, so tell me about your experience in such and such, or have you ever been fired? What happened there? Or tell me about how you meet your deadlines. Obviously, you're in a field where you have to meet deadlines. How does that work? What if you have more than one thing going on at the same time? How do you prioritize? Okay? How do you know which is important? What should you be spending your time on if you've got 2 or 3 things that have to get done? How do you handle that? Then there are things such as behavioral questions. Usually it's tell me about a time when. Tell me about a time when you disagreed with your boss. How did that work out? Now, that is a behavioral question. And usually what you want to answer with a question like that is, I gave my opinion, and I gave the reasons why I thought it should be done this way, but the boss wanted to do it a different way, and I went along with it. What they want to learn about you is, do you stick up for yourself? Okay. Can you make a good argument for the way you want to do things? And then in the end, you go along because if the boss says it has to get done this way, that's how you do it. That's really what they are fishing for when they ask you that kind of question. Tell me about a time when it didn't work out or you failed at something. Now, they're not so much interested in the failure. What they're interested in is, how did you recover? What did you learn from it? Everybody makes mistakes. We know that. Everybody has failures. We know that. But what the interviewer really wants to know is, well, what did you learn from that? How did you change your behavior? What did you do different the next time? So that's another behavioral question. So when you hear the words, tell me about a time when, that means it's a behavioral question. Tell me about a time when you didn't get along with one of your colleagues who you're working on a project with, or you're working on a story with. How did that work out? Again, that's a behavioral question. It's not about the fact that you can do the research and write the story. No, it's about how did you get along with people. Ultimately, the hardest part of any job is not the job itself. You have the skills. You can do the job. The problems are with people. They're always with people. And in an interview process, the person who's interviewing you not only wants to know that you can do the job, they also want to know that you can get along with people. All right? So that is a big piece of it, no matter what job you have. That is always a big piece of it. I have two grown sons, 36 and 30, and when they come to me with issues, it's never about the job. It's always about getting along with this one or that one or whatever. So that's very important. All right, so you go on the interview. What happens after the interview? What do you do after you have an interview? Okay, you send a follow-up email. Now, some people think it's a thank you. It's not just a thank you. If you're just saying thank you for your time, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time and you're wasting the email. The follow-up is another opportunity for you to show how you can make a contribution to this organization. You need to show that you've listened and you learned something during this process. I learned about this broadcasting company that you're working on this, and I know I can help you with that. As I mentioned, you're going to reiterate things you said during the interview. Yes, you're going to repeat yourself. You're going to say again some of the things that you said during the interview. If you answered a question haphazardly and you weren't happy with an answer, the follow-up email is an opportunity for you to add to that answer, to edit that answer and say something in addition to what you said during the interview. The follow-up is an opportunity for you to make another impression or improve upon the impression that you made during the interview process. And the follow-up is an opportunity for you to overcome any obstacles. If you heard something during the interview that led you to believe that maybe they weren't so happy about this aspect of your work history, you need to think about, well, how could I overcome that? I haven't done this, but I can do this for you. So the follow-up is extremely important. It is not only a thank you. It is another opportunity for you to differentiate yourself from other people who are going for the job. Now, let's say you do everything right, you go on the interview, it's a great interview, you send the follow-up, it's great, you don't get it. Then what do you do? Again, the person you've met with, whether it's for an information meeting or it's for an actual job interview, is someone who is now part of your network. It's someone you've met. It's someone you made an impression upon. They have met you. Maybe you weren't a right fit for this job, but who knows, maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year down the line, either they may have a job opening or they may have a colleague of theirs who works someplace else and they heard of an opening and they think of you. So you must stay in touch with these people, not just right after, once a month, every 4 to 6 weeks, a month, month and a half. Send the person an email. Tell them about what you've been doing. If you've read something in a trade journal or you heard about something that you think might be of interest to them, mention it. Maybe they've already read it. It doesn't matter. It shows that you're keeping in touch with them. It shows that you're aware of what their interests are. It shows that you have, you're up to the minute, okay? You're keeping in touch with what's going on in your field, which is very important. So do stay in touch with all these people whom you meet, whether it's alumni or it's people you've met through the associations or people you meet at a social event. Try to meet with them, follow up with them, stay in touch with them, because you never know where the next position may come from. I worked at the College of Insurance, which is now part of St. John's University. It's downtown on Murray Street. And 10 years after I worked there, I stayed in touch here and there with the woman who had hired me, who was the then president. She moved on to TIA Cref. She moved on to the Risk and Insurance Management Society. And when I was at Westchester Community College, I was looking for my next job, and I was trying to contact her to be my reference. She was trying to contact me. She had a position, an opening. Well, of course she hired me. She had hired me 10 years before. She hired me again. It's not like we were socially engaged. It's not like we hung out together and we, no. But she knew me, she knew my professional work, and so she hired me a second time. When I was at Westchester Community College, I hired a man to help me with the distance learning. I left after 4 years, he stayed. 5 years later, I was at the American Society of Mechanical Engineers working on online learning. I said, we need to hire this guy. I hired him again. I hired him away from Westchester Community College. They weren't very happy, but he was very happy. So it's very important to stay in touch with people on a professional level. And being part of an organization, association that has regularly scheduled meetings, maybe once a month or even once a quarter, kind of keeps you in touch with these people because you never know who knows whom. That's very important. So what does a career coach do for people? Okay. If you don't know quite what your next move is going to be, you may not have an exact idea of what you'd like to be doing. A coach will help analyze, assess your skills, your interests, and help you figure out what's the next thing. If you know what you want to do, but you know your resume is not in such great shape, a coach can help you rewrite the resume and make it a stronger representation of who you are. If you've got a resume, you're getting interviews, but you're not doing so well on the interviews, a coach can practice with you, go over questions and answers. I've spent 1 to 2 hours with people, including Thanos, 2 hours on interview prep. What are they going to ask you? How are you going to answer it? How do you prepare for the interview process? All right. Let's say, okay, you've gone on interviews and you get some offers, but you're not sure which offer is good for you. A coach can help you analyze the pros and the cons of taking one job versus not taking one job. I had one client who interviewed, he got an offer, he took the offer, it wasn't exactly what he wanted, it was on Long Island, it was less money, but he took it because he needed it. A week later, he gets an offer from the other place, which was in Manhattan and for more money, and he says, what do I do now? I said, well, I'm going to help you write the letter to turn down the first place that you already accepted so that you don't burn your bridges, and then I'm going to help you write the letter for this new place. And I helped him write the letter. So coaches can do a lot of different things for you. They also help motivate you. A job search is not a sprint. It's a marathon. It takes a long time. It's not just a few weeks. It's a few months. It could be 6 months to a year. The best time to look for a job is when you have a job. People come to me after they've lost a job or left a job because they were so unhappy. If you're starting to get unhappy, it's time to start looking because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're so unhappy that you just have to quit. You can't stand it anymore. You're tearing your hair out and you have to quit. There is a prejudice against people who are not working. So hang in there as long as you can, but spend your free time looking for your next job because it's much better to be looking for a job while you're still working. Okay. So, questions. Open the floor for questions. Yes?
I have 2 separate questions. How do you recommend finding recruiters? Is it just a simple kind of Google search for something? And secondly, with LinkedIn, I get LinkedIn requests all the time from people who I've never met and have no connection to me. What is your advice
Okay.
on that?
So, recruiters. You can look up recruiters for your field and find out who they are, but then you need to talk to your colleagues and say, have you used them? What do you know about them? Again, you want a recommendation. Just like a restaurant or a trip, you want a recommendation. Now, LinkedIn, yes, we get connection requests all the time. First of all, look at the person's profile and say, do I want to be connected with this person or don't I want to be connected? Nobody says you have to connect with everyone who wants to connect with you. So that's really up to you to decide if it's going to be a worthwhile connection or it's not a worthwhile connection. Yes, sir.
About the LinkedIn, I would like to ask. Maybe I misunderstood something. You mentioned, if I remember well, it's a 500 connection. It's approximately the good connection number. Why 500? Less or more?
I don't know why. Okay. I didn't make the number up. That's something that LinkedIn has decided if you have more than 500 connections, then you get a star. It really doesn't matter. You have to decide who you want to connect with. They will send you. You'll get individual people coming to you to want to connect. Because I worked for the Mechanical Engineering Society, every mechanical engineering student in India wants to connect with me. I don't want to connect with them. A, I have nothing to do with mechanical engineering. I am not a mechanical engineer. I can't help them find a job. So no, I'm not going to connect with them. So you have to make that decision, what works for you. Yes, sir.
Thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Very informative and interesting. But you did mention about on the LinkedIn using a professional picture.
Ah, yes, thank you for bringing that up. On LinkedIn, there is a photograph. You must have a photograph, unlike your resume where I said you should not have a photograph. And the photograph must be a professional photograph, not a selfie. No selfies, please. That's another thing I work with my clients on. I work with a number of professional photographers who do headshots. That's what they do for a living. They do headshots. And they will make a wonderful professional photograph for LinkedIn. Thank you for reminding me about that.
Yeah, because I remember that when I used to have a selfie on my LinkedIn. So I went for a session like this in Washington, D.C., and when I changed my picture profile, I started receiving a lot of job offers from people that I don't even know. They just, saw my resume and saw that I have a professional picture, and they start, coming with.
There you go. There it is. People will find you on LinkedIn. This past summer, I got a call from an outplacement company in Iowa. Never heard of them, Positions. And they found me because they were looking for a career coach who speaks French, because they thought they were going to get a client in Quebec. It didn't turn out. They didn't get the client in Quebec. But they found me on LinkedIn because I am a career coach and I speak French. There you go. So LinkedIn is a great place for people to find you, as long as it looks professional, you have keywords, and the keywords are repeated, and you have your references. It's a great place for people to find you. Thank you. Yes, sir. And then you.
I'm a published writer, but I wonder how one find number of, and you're explaining your resume, you want to say eyeballs, like you said. How does one measure that? For instance, I published an article, say, right? How do I know, okay, this,
Where is it
this
published?
reached so many people? Because of late, circulation is not enough, right? You need eyeballs, right?
Well, the company would have to be able to tell you that. I mean, because they would know. The people who are running the website know how many eyeballs are looking at the website. Will they share it with you? I don't know. You have to ask them.
That's the question.
I know. You can say, you certainly know what the circulation is. You can say what the circulation is. That's a public number. I don't know about the eyeballs. It depends on your relationship with them and if they're willing to share that with you.
You can use, there is a soft app on Google.
Google
It's
Analytics.
free. Yeah, Google Analytics, and you can connect it with your publication, login, and you can track how many people actually visiting your.
What's the name you said?
Google Analytics. Google
Analytics.
Analytics.
Oh,
Yes.
good text.
I
Yes.
have a question about
The woman at the end had a question
Thank you.
first.
I just had a quick question about other social media, about because it starts feeling like a black hole, like Instagram, Twitter. It's like, I feel like if I'm not gonna be really good, I don't wanna do it.
Don't waste your time with them. They're really just social. Twitter, Instagram, they're very social. If you were selling beauty products or whatever, great, but no, not for what you folks are doing. You don't even have to waste your time. I mean, I have a Facebook page, and people contact me all the time that way, but it has nothing to do with my job, so I don't waste any time on it. Okay? Yes, and you had a question.
So it was related to kind of both things. Basically, and I don't know if that might be my experience, but a lot of my jobs or my freelance gigs came up because I got published in something else. So where is the use of links as far as because a lot of the times when I get asked to send my resume, they also ask to send a portfolio. So with LinkedIn, how do we do that?
Well, you can put your links right in the summary. if they allow links, you can put links in the summary. The summary has 2,000 characters, that's a lot of space, and you can say, oh, to read more about me, here are some examples of my publications, boom, 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 3 or 4, and send them to the things you want to send them to. Yes, question?
How much should you go back? So does it make sense to list stuff that you did 20 years ago? Or
Okay, how far do you go back? As far as an accomplishment is concerned, if it's a really big accomplishment, doesn't matter how far you go back because you are not going to put down the date or the year of the accomplishment. That's okay. As far as your actual work history goes, don't go back more than 10 or 15 years. You don't need to. Again, because then it will be obvious, oh, this person's so old, we don't want them. Excuse me, but yes, there is bias against age. There's ageism, and ageism doesn't start in your 50s, 60s. It starts in your 40s, believe it or not, okay? So you need not put in every single thing you did. Your resume is not your autobiography. It doesn't have everything you've done since high school or college. Please, 10 to 15 years tops, that's it. Unless you were going for a CEO position and they wanted someone with 20 or 30 years of experience, fine, then you can put it in. Otherwise, don't. And certainly don't put in the date of your graduation. I left that out a long time ago. Yes, another question.
And some job applications, it says cover letter optional. Do you think you should always do a cover letter if it says that?
Okay, now, here's the thing about applications online, the important piece I've left out. When you do apply online, let's say, okay, you've seen something, you do want to apply online, you fill out the application, yes, put in a cover letter, always put in a cover letter. You need to find out the name of a person at that company, and you need to write directly to that person, not human resources. So, again, don't spend all your time answering the ads online for jobs. If you do, then you must write directly to a person at that company with the same information, the same resume, the same cover letter. That way you know at least one human being will see it. The other way, you have no clue. It goes into a black hole, and that's it. All right, so how can you work with me if you want to work with me as a coach? I do a number of things. I work with people monthly, and I recommend 3 months minimum. A month includes 3 hours of coaching, unlimited emails, and a deliverable. So every month it could be something else. Maybe the first month it's a resume and a cover letter. Maybe the second month it's the LinkedIn profile. Maybe it's a list of companies with contact information. Or maybe it's a list of interview questions and answers, or private coaching by the hour, or a small group. I didn't do one most recently, but in the new year I'll start again. I do a small group. There's usually 3, 4, 5, 6 people in this small group. Now, I do speak at the public library, and that is open to the public, free, no need to register. My next talk will be December 20th. December 20th at 3:30 p.m. Sybil Library. The Sybil Library is located at 188 Madison Avenue between East 34th Street and East 35th Street. It's downstairs. They have speakers every week for careers, and they're free, and you don't have to register. Yes?
what is the date beyond that? Beyond the-
Well, you have to go to the library and find out. Just go to the library, New York Public Library events, and it'll have a list of all the career events and a list of all the financial events. So, yeah, it's your public library. It's yours. Use it. Thank you very much, everyone. This was great.